morning, good morning. I hope everybody, visitors and members, please go ahead if you have your Bibles or use your phones and go ahead and go to the scripture lessons that we have there. So, because I have a lot we want to cover this morning on the book of Judges.
Well,
a lot of times people say, for all the years that I've been a member of the Shrines of the Black Madonna, people used to say, y'all don't use the Bible. Shrines of the Black Madonna use the Bible. And anything could be further from the truth about us using the Bible. It's just the context of what we take out of the Bible, our Bible, our interpretation, our exegesis, what we've discovered about the Bible and how we want to live our lives.
Amen. Because
it has been used against us in so many ways, especially on the slave plantation. But the book of Judges, first of all, I encourage everybody to read it. It has a lot of contemporary applications to it. It is a book full of violence and sex and disobedience to God. At the same time, it shows God's faithfulness and it shows the many heroes that God brings to rise up and to bring his people back to the covenant and to God's will. You can make a good video game out of the book of Judges. You know how to play Xbox. Judges would be a great box. Say, son, what are you into? And I'm playing Judges. With that, the book of Judges is the seventh book in the Bible, part of the historical books called the former prophets. Judges is so named after the leaders who God raised up and empowered for specific tasks of deliverance for the black nation Israel. Somebody please read Judges 2:16 through 19.
Nevertheless, the Lord raised up judges, which delivered them out of the hand of those that spoiled them. And yet they would not hearken unto their judges, but they went a-whoring after other gods, and bowed themselves unto them. They turned quickly out of the way which their fathers walked in, obeying the commandments of the Lord, but they did not so. And when the Lord raised them up judges, then the Lord was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For it repented the Lord because of their groanings by reason of them that oppressed them and vexed them. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and corrupted themselves more than their fathers.
my Lord.
In following other gods to serve them and to bow down unto them. They ceased not from their own doings, nor from their stubborn way.
Mercy.
Now, Judges shows Israel's rebellion against God in failing to drive out occupying people. Thus, they ended up breaching the covenant by adopting foreign cultural and religious ways of life. This blatant rejection of their covenant relationship caused them to forfeit the promises of God. Thus, they went on an ongoing cycle of sin, oppression, and deliverance. This repetitive cycle was interrupted by the rise of the various judges. This took place either through military action or legal disputes. The book of Judges reflects that now there were 12 judges, 6 minor and 6 major. The book of Judges reflects the history of the nation Israel from the death of Joshua to the establishment of the monarchy under Samuel. Judges deals with what happens to a people without strong leadership and unity of purpose. It also reflects God's continued efforts to save the black nation Israel because of the covenant.
Okay.
After the death of Joshua, the black nation Israel were faced with a serious problem because Joshua had represented the power of God in their midst. He had held them together, and because of him, they could maintain a belief in the covenant and the law of God.
Well,
now these are some words to inspire. Somebody read Judges 2:6 through 10. I know it says 6 through 8, but I want to hear 6 through 10.
When Joshua had dismissed the people, the sons of Israel went each to his own inheritance to possess the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua, all the days of their elders, who survived Joshua, who had seen all the great work of the Lord, which he had done for Israel. Then Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at his age of 110. And they buried him in the territory of his inheritance, the Timothah Herbs, in the hills country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gosai. And all the generations also were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord, nor the works of the Lord.
Have mercy.
Now, it was saying in the beginning that those were words to inspire. Their mission was simply to complete the conquest of the land that God had, the inheritance that God had already given them, and already had promised them through Moses and back through the patriarch Abraham. Yet, Israel failed at their attempt of self-government or group autonomy, whichever you want to call it. Their so-called self-sufficiency was undermined by their personal lack of faith and personal obedience to the covenant and law.
All right.
Their apparent lack of personal commitment to the covenant and law created an atmosphere of disunity and chaos. There was no central authority or outstanding leadership after the death of Joshua. Each tribe focused on their own personal allotment, their own possession of my territory. They basically reduced themselves to tribalism. Now, it's not listed in the book. Somebody read Judges 17:6, and this is a continued comment, which you'll reframe, that you'll see in the book of Judges. Judges 17:6.
In those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
Repeat that again for me.
In
My
those
Lord.
days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
Have mercy.
I do my own thing, right? Whatever, and it seems like in today's world that is how people live. Whatever is right in my own mind, this postmodern theology, this postmodern world where each individual has encapsulated themselves in, I do my thing. You know, you do yours over there, let me be. And this is partly what happens to Israel. And a point to remember, faithfulness and obedience to God cannot be accomplished simply because that is what one wants to do or desires to do. Faithfulness to God requires the possession of an inner spiritual power that enables one to overcome the selfish, egotistical temptations that emerge constantly out of one's rational mind.
Well,
How can you serve God when really everything is about me? It's our perspective and our sense of proportion self-centered most of the time. Example. We may think that our personal problems are more important than anyone else's. In fact, we might not even be able to consider other people's needs at all. How often do you say to yourselves, when you ask God all the time, what can God do for me? God, help me with this rent. God, help me with this. God, help me with this sickness. God, help me with my child. But when do we ever wake up in the morning and say, God, what can I do for you today? What is it what purpose can I serve for your living today? The book of Joshua shows what happens to a people who have no God-centered nationalistic leadership like Joshua. Now, Joshua's only mistake was that he failed to give them a gift that what Moses had given to him. And if somebody read quickly Joshua 24 through 28.
Joshua Judges.
Joshua.
You want Joshua?
I want Joshua.
and the people said unto Joshua, the Lord our God will we serve, and his voice will we obey. So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day and set them a statute and an ordinance in Shechem. And Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God, and took a great stone and set it up there under an oak that was by the sanctuary of the Lord. And Joshua said unto all the people, Behold, this stone shall be a witness unto us, for it hath heard all the words of the Lord, which he spake unto us. It shall be therefore a witness unto you, lest ye deny your God. So Joshua let the people depart, every man unto his inheritance.
Now, I read that because this is like, despite Israel having a history that they could look at and follow, they chose not to follow. They forgot. It was amnesia or selective amnesia. Now, the mistake what I was talking about that Joshua made. Remember, Joshua was very faithful to Moses. Remember, he waited on the bottom of Mount Sinai after Moses had received the 10 Commandments. He waited faithfully. He didn't know if he was going to come back down. And once he got to him, I always remember, I think this is a quote in the Bible where he said he had heard noise. Moses, I hear noise in the camp. The nation is getting prepared for war. And he was enthusiastic, but Moses replies to him, no, that's not war. Those Negroes are down there partying. And then there's Joshua's first assignment, which was a very important assignment. He was one of the 12 that was picked to spy out the land that they were to inherit, that they were to conquer. And he was the only one that brought back a favorable, him and Caleb were the only ones that brought back a favorable report. So his first assignment, he did well. And his faithfulness was rewarded by God, because Moses even commemorated Joshua in front of the nation Israel. And I'm piggybacking back on what Founder Takuma had talked about last week. And if you're not here, this is what we say, come to the Bible class so that you can follow us, because we're going to go from Genesis to Revelation in this Bible class that we're having right now. But it is a black Christian nationalist interpretation.
Amen.
It's not the same interpretation as Second Baptist or First Presbyterian. This is black Christian nationalist. Teachers number 3 is very important, because despite having history, despite having saying that we will do what God has told us to do, it says even within the framework of correct analysis, philosophy, and program projection, it is impossible to build an effective organization without loyalty, discipline, and a clearly defined chain of command. Amen. Now, I don't know what Joshua, what his mindset was, but he should have pulled one of his leaders, his trusted young men, and brought him along the same way that Moses did for him. And this is in hindsight, because, you know, it's easy to go back in time and criticize. This is not a criticism of Joshua, but more, I bet he would have did it if he would have thought about it. Israel not only lost Israel not only lost leadership with the death of Joshua, they also lost their unity and strength that came from acting as a nation. Somebody will read Judges 1 through 10 and Judges 1, 27 through 36.
Now it came about after the death of Joshua that the sons of Israel inquired the Lord, saying, Who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? And the Lord said, Judah shall go up, behold, I have given the land into his hand. Then Judah said to Simeon, his brother, Come up with me into the territory allotted me, that we may fight against the Canaanites. And I in turn will go with you into the territory allotted you. So Simeon went with him. And Judah went up, and the Lord gave the Canaanites and the Perizzites into their hands, and they defeated 10,000 men at Bezek. And they found Adoni, Bezek, and fought against him, and they defeated the Canaanites and the Perizzites. But the Adoni Bezek fled And they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and big toes. And Andoni Gazit said, 70 kings with their thumbs and their big toes cut off handed scraps under my table, as I have done. So God has repaid me. So they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. Then the sons of Judah fought against Jerusalem, and captured it, and struck it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. And afterward the sons of Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites, living in the hill country, and in the Negev, and in the wilderness. So Judah went against the Canaanites who lived in Hebron, now the name of Hebron, formerly was Kiriath Arba, and they struck Seshai and the Ammon and Talmai.
Okay. That's it. No, hold right there. Thank you. I wrote that out just because of the limited of time. I wanted to show in the beginning when they were conquering, when they were taking possession of the land. First thing they did was correct. They asked God what to do. They didn't talk among themselves. And then the tribes united in order to fulfill the military action that was needed. But as we go on, somebody read the other judges. But this became limited. And they began to compromise after this. Somebody read, what is this, Judges 1, 27 through 36.
Manasseh did not subdue Bethshean and its outlying villages, or Tunach and its villages. He did not drive out the inhabitants of Dor and its outlying villages, or Eldium and its villages, or Megiddo and its villages. In those parts of the Canaanites held their ground. But when the Israelites became stronger, they subjected the Canaanites to forced labor, though they did not drive them out, nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites in Gezer. Thus the Canaanites went on living there among them. Zebulun did not drive out the inhabitants of Kitron or the Nahalo. The Canaanites remained among the Zebulun, but was subjected to forced labor. Asher did not drive out the inhabitants of Akkar, or of Sidon, or Alab, or Azib, or Abik, or Rehob. So the Asherites lived among the Canaanites and inhabitants of the country, but they did not drive them out. Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth-Shemesh, or of Beth-Anah. They settled among the Canaanites, inhabitants of the country, but the inhabitants of the Shema and of Beth-Anah were compelled to do the forced labor for them. The Amorites drove back the Denites into the highlands and would not allow them to enter the plain below. The Amorites held their ground at Har-Hers and Shalbin, but when the hand of the house of Jacob grew heavier, they were subjected to forced labor. The territory of the Edomites begins at the ascent of Akrabim, runs the rock, and continues on upward.
Amen.
Now, this was part of the incomplete. I wanted to read that because they began to do the same thing over and over and over again in terms of they're not conquering the lands that God has given them the power to do. Now, other things about them, this is God was dealing with separatism as well. Today we look at separatism, oh God, it's for everybody, but obviously the Bible witnesses that God built separate nations. Israel was put together to be a nation in which other nations were to be blessed by. They were a people set apart to show that these were going to be priests and holy men.
All right.
Amen.
But as we see, even with the readings, even with the king that they cut off his thumbs, God didn't tell them to do that. They had already started picking up little bitty traces of what other cultures would do. Now, they were supposed to kill and get them out there, but they were not supposed to try and embarrass this king or maim this king. So we see just a little bit of individualism and adopting other ways of life that are mentioned in there.
Amen.
Real fast. Covenant disobedience and conquest. Basically, this is Israel. Somebody read Judges 2, 1 through 5. And then we'll move on. I have to wrap this up. My time. Judges 2, 1 through 5.
The angels of Yahweh went up from Gilgal to Bethel and came to the house of Israel, and he said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you into this land, which I swore to give your fathers. I said, I shall never break my covenant with you. You, for your part, must make no covenant with the inhabitants of this country. You must destroy their altars, but you have not obeyed my orders. What is that you have done? Very well, I now say this. I am not going to drive out these nations before you. They shall become your oppressors, and their God shall be a snare for you.
No, my Lord.
The angel,
Go to Judges 2, 11 through 15. We got to shorten this for the sake of time. I see myself. Judges 2, 11 through 15. Someone read that.
Then the sons of Israel did what displeases Yahweh and served Baal. They deserted Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods from the gods of peoples around them. They bowed down to these. They provoked Yahweh. They deserted Yahweh to serve Baal and Astartes.
My Lord.
Then Yahweh's anger flamed out against Israel. He handed them over to pillagers who plundered them. He delivered them to the enemies surrounding them, and they were not able to resist them. In every warlike venture, the hand of Yahweh was there to foil them, and Yahweh had warned, as Yahweh had sworn to them. Thus, he reduced them to dire distress.
Okay. Without faith and an uncompromising belief in God, the covenant and law, without the covenant and law, Israel became weak and quickly lost their identity as the people of God.
Mercy.
Israel's weakness during the period of the Judges can be described in many ways and in various levels. Politically, Israel was a loose federation of tribes. Listen to this, this is real important. Think about today in contemporary application. Israel was a loose confederation of tribes who joined together during extreme cases only. When something just, we can't handle as a neighborhood, then all of Israel came together only for that crisis. This generation of physically free Israelites had never experienced self-rule. They were naive about the nature of power. Politically today, as the communities change, I mean, and I'll just call some names. In Atlanta, we have Kasim Reed. We got Black City Councilman.
That's right.
We have Clarence Thomas. We have Condoleezza Rice.
Have mercy.
We have Colin Powell.
Oh, my Lord.
And we have, this is not a spot by any means, we have President Obama, who's done a great job for the position that he's in. Yet, despite all of their great efforts and great achievements individually, there really has not been a change in the life of the black community at all. It's very low. I bet y'all know something that I don't know.
No, I'm right.
By the way, and this is my president, Chicago is one of the murder capitals of the world right now. There are more brothers that are killing each other in Chicago than in Afghanistan or Iraq or any major war that's going on. Socially, the people of Israel were individualistic and marked by the slave mentality. They had no personal regard for one another, and therefore no meaningful connection to the covenant, right? The covenant is about a group. The covenant is about people coming together.
Right.
Can you see that? Do you think we have any connection within each other today, socially? They were naive about the nature of being a group or a people. Didn't make any difference. Again, it brought down the tribalism, my particular gang or my particular tribe, or even within those tribes, it broke down just me, myself, and I. This is what this is all about.
Well,
I'm doing fine. Y'all must be doing something wrong. If I got a good job, if I got a car,
That's
I
right.
got a house, you know, basically,
Well.
I'm doing fine. It's something that
Right.
that you're weak in inside of yourself.
Well,
Spiritually, they felt weak and disconnected from an experience of inner strength and innate human potential. They only had an external sense of God's transcendence. Thus, they were naive about
Well.
the nature of God and their creation.
Well.
So it took more than just land.
Right.
Like they were giving the land of Israel, but they didn't have this internal strength that you need in order
right,
to
brother.
believe in the covenant. Now,
Okay,
check
brother.
this out. You can't do God's will on your own.
Well.
I don't care how many
brother.
books you read. I don't care whatever groups that you're a part of. If you don't get this connection with God and surrender to God's will, where God takes over your life,
Well.
how can you do something that God wants you to do, and it's God's will on your own?
Well.
Think about that.
Come on.
Let me think about that. How can I do God's will with my little power? I can't even get my own stuff.
All right, brother.
Amen.
All right, brother. Teach them judges,
In
brother.
the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, we are a covenant community.
Yes.
Acting on the premise that salvation is a group experience.
Well.
Say that again.
Salvation is a group experience.
The Bible shows us that God relates to us as a group, the people of God.
Amen.
The Bible shows for us in Black Christian Nationalism that He operates through groups, that we are the people of God.
Well.
The Bible also teaches us what it means to be faithful. One is never truly faithful without complete self-surrender to the services of God.
Come on.
We teach nothing is more sacred than the liberation of black people.
Amen, brother.
An experience of God is crucial to obedience to the covenant. It's crucial. You will not do it on your own for a sustained a period of time trying to use your rational mind for a spiritual experience.
Amen.
A rational understanding is inadequate to sustain commitment to fulfilling one covenant relationships and responsibilities. I see I'm being cut off. That's about that. Next week we're going to go into the individual judges, the heroes that God raised up through His faithfulness to the covenant to save Israel.
Amen.